This week's Retail Week is brought to you by Avail, Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Never stop pushing. Good morning. Welcome again to another edition of CropLife Retail Week. It's Paul and Eric again together.
Yes.
Had some time in the office the last week or so, and we'll be in until next week. We have our PACE Advisory Council meeting, our Precision Ag Institute meeting, so we'll get a sense of what's happening in the marketplace and kind of where we are and engage the market moving forward, which not necessarily in a happy place right now in terms of commodity prices and everything, and looking forward doesn't look super rosy, but you know, for the well-prepared retailer, the folks that are kind of geared up for the future, you know, looking at services and you know, size and scale to succeed, probably be okay. And we're getting some sense of that, I think, from the CropLife 100 and their attitudes and how they see themselves moving forward. Now you've been immersed in the numbers and looking at that. Any cool takeaways as we entered the December vortex of magazine production?
Yeah, Paul. One of the interesting things about the CropLife 100, of course, I've been playing with the numbers here the last couple of days, and it looks like, you know, on the good news side, it looks like the marketplace revenue will be up slightly, about $200 or $300 million from last year. But what's interesting to me, Paul, is that we've had a lot of companies consolidate, which has brought in tens of millions of dollars to a lot of bottom lines, and I guess I kind of expected the marketplace to be up a little higher than about $200 million when it was all said and done. So what that tells me is that, you know, several of the major players did not have real good years and that their numbers were dragging down the whole top 100. So we'll have to see what the final numbers say. I still am missing about 10 folks' forms, which I'll hopefully get here by the end of by the time we do the video again, I'll have them in. But you know, right now, like I say, the numbers are up, but it's not as strong as I would have imagined.
Interesting. I wonder how companies are kind of reorganizing their outlets, taking a look at what they're doing, making sure that they're being as efficient as possible, and maybe incorporating some closings or mergings of outlets.
Well, actually, that's not reflected in the numbers. I know I did check outlets, Paul, and last year there was 4,519 outlets that were represented in the top 100, and this year it looks like it's going to be closer to 4,600. So there are more outlets that are going to be represented, but the revenues are not as rosy as they were a year ago.
Interesting. Well,
and most of it's coming from fertilizer. It looks like fertilizer is going to take a big hit again in terms of market share. Crop protection will be up, and unfortunately fertilizer is the biggest component of the crop input marketplace. So if it's down, then everything else is going to suffer accordingly.
Yeah, it is what it is. Another maybe challenging year ahead. Well, we're going to take a break now. We'll talk about consolidation and I think Dicamba when we come back.
We want our farmers to be successful, and if they're spending money to put on phosphate in particular, we like to put Avail with it so that a lot more of that gets into the plant. We know that a majority of it gets tied up in the soil before a plant has a chance to work with it. So we like to put Avail to increase that availability to the crop.
Welcome back. I know you know, it's not consolidation, but it's certainly a shift in products that we got announced with Syngenta-Nufarm this week.
Yes, actually, Paul. Yes, Syngenta, as part of its merger with ChemChina, is divesting a couple of crop protection products in Europe, in particular, and selling them to Nufarm for $490 million. And what was interesting to me, Paul, about this particular note was that sort of buried in the press release, Nufarm sort of mentioned that they had a potential another crop protection portfolio acquisition in the offing. So the musical chairs when it comes to brands and products and changing owners will continue for a little while longer, it looks.
Interesting. We have Jackie Pucci, one of our editors who's really specialized in the crop protection side, writing up a piece on the super generics that are kind of emerging, both patent companies that are potentially partners for retailers as you look at 2018 and how you approach the season. So look for that in December. it should be a very interesting story. And of course, now there's still, the never-ending saga of Dicamba.
Dicamba, yes, of course, Paul. Agriculture works best when it stays in the field, but unfortunately, with Dicamba, some of the progress wasn't staying in the field it was supposed to. So we ended up with some off-target movement in the marketplace, and a lot of growers were complaining and filing complaints with the states. In particular, in Arkansas, there were so many complaints that the state board has recommended that for 2018 that growers not be allowed to use dicamba in their fields after April 15th. Well, as you might imagine, the manufacturers of the dicamba resistant crops don't care for that early cutoff date. So now we have Monsanto has filed suit against the Arkansas board, saying that this is unfair and will hurt their business, and that the board actually ignored 14 volatility studies they submitted, showing that dicamba usage is safe if done properly. So we'll have to see where this goes, Paul, but we've also heard that some insurers are telling that growers that dicamba damage is not going to be covered, so that their only recourse, if they're going to get money back for lost crop revenue, is to possibly sue the applicators and or the manufacturers. So unfortunately, Paul, the lawsuits are going to be coming fast and furious, I fear, for the next year or so regarding dicamba. And the one other thing is that the projections are that we'll have about 40 million acres of dicamba-resistant crops planted in 2018. So fortunately, it looks like this issue will continue to follow us well into the next year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the industry and the government and retailers, we need to keep talking about this and really looking at this carefully. These battles are inevitable when people are drawing lines. And it's probably, I think, perfectly reasonable for Arkansas to want to ensure through some sort of rule that nothing like what happened last year happens again. On the other hand, I'm sure there's points to the studies, and we just have to come together and work this stuff out. And I sometimes a lawsuit's the only way this stuff works itself out. But all the parties kind of need to come together. This is not serving the industry well, and we need some clear solutions. We need people to agree to get together and figure this stuff out. It's frustrating. It's frustrating for retailers as well, who really want to use this technology, want to use it safely, but nobody wants to get sued. Nobody wants to damage a neighbor's crop. It's got to work this stuff out.
We'll have to see what happens. I mean, at the moment, it looks like the lawyers are going to be the happiest people on the planet, and that unfortunately agriculture is not going to be as happy.
Such as it ever was. All right, well, thanks for joining us this edition of CropLife Retail Weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thank you to this week's video sponsor, Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer from Verdesian Life Sciences.